Hello, folks. Welcome again to another Energy Matters interview. I am always so grateful that you decide to tune in and hear some of these amazing transformational people that I'm bringing. Today, I am absolutely honored to bring Mark Porteous to you. He is known as the Soul Connector, and he's the co-founder of the Soul Affiliate Alliance and the Joint Venture Directory, which I am part of, a proud member of. He's also a #1 best-selling author of Soulful Leadership, A Spiritual Path to Health, Wealth, and Love and Inspired Living, Superpowers for Health, Love, and Business. Mark connects people to who they are at the soul level, why they're here, and to the people who can help them thrive in their divine purpose. And one of the things I know about you, Mark, is you're just this incredibly generous spirit, and you're so driven by the sense of your own soul purpose that it just radiates from you every time I see you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me, Vicki. I feel deeply aligned with who you are, the way that you show up, and very, very excited to be here today.
Oh, so glad. So the first question that I want to ask is, I've read your book. I've read a little bit about what took you to come to where you are. I'd love to know, when you think of the word energy, what do you think of? How do you interpret that, or what does that mean for you?
It's wow, it's like diving right in, because I'm thinking about the combination, and what I love is seeing how science and spirituality are the same side of the coin. And that energy is really that coin, because everything is energy. Like, scientifically, we know that everything is energy. In fact, we know, like, up to less than a second after the Big Bang, how light created the first matter and the first elements, and how those elements literally created the entire universe, so that everything is literally created from energy. So there's that component of it, but then also there's that conscious energy that isn't the matter and or even the waves or the photon. It's the consciousness, and that's really what I believe was before the Big Bang, will always be. And so when I think of energy, I think of these two different types of energy: the physical energy and then the conscious energy.
Oh, I love that. That's so beautiful. So when you think about the conscious energy and how you've gone on your journey to being where you are right now, tell me a little bit about how that consciousness got awakened, developed, evolved. It is an evolutionary process. Tell me a little bit about your own journey with it.
Well, mine started very young. My father was a minister until I was 6. And when I was 6, my parents divorced, and my father was immediately thrown out of the church that he had helped to build.
Because divorce was not acceptable?
Absolutely. And it's always the man's fault, because especially as the minister. I mean, how can a minister ever divorce a woman? And my mom told me years later, she's like, I was a mess. We got married at 16. I was 16, he was 21. And we lasted for 8 years, or no, it was more than that, 15 years or something. And so, but yes, it was because of their judgment about him, automatically becoming, he's the leader, so cut him out. And so my mom got very, very close with Jesus, and creating that relationship, where my father started questioning religion in general. He knew the Bible very well, but he also knew how it was often used to manipulate and to disempower and to divide and all these other things. And so he was on a crusade to help really create a freedom of religion rather than an imposing of religion.
So that's an amazing journey just for him. But one of the things that occurs to me is that every PK that I know, every preacher's kid that I know, and I know a few, including the one that I'm married to, my wife, is that there's kind of a fishbowl experience for kids who are children of preachers or ministers. Or did you have a sense of eyes clapped on you during this divorce time?
So again, I was 6 when it was starting. The fishbowl was happening before then. And so if the marriage had continued, it would have been a lot more than. And I do know exactly what you're talking about, where mine was more of the kicked out of, the shame. And so, and my father didn't just let it go. He went and talked on every talk show in the 80s really debating Jerry Falwell, Jimmy Baker, all of the big televangelists at the time. And so, there was a lot of people that were in the Christian community who were like, oh, your dad is just a bad man. So I had this, it wasn't about a fishbowl thing. It was about, oh, look at all this like judgment. And I had been questioning, well, I guess that's when I started questioning that it was when I was starting to see the misalignment of what people were preaching versus how people were behaving. And I had these questions that I would ask my mother. I didn't understand, how can a really good man who's been good his whole life, but he's Jewish and doesn't accept Jesus as his savior, he goes to hell. And the other person who's been an awful human being his whole life accepts Jesus into his life and he gets in to go to the pearly gates. And she said, I don't know the answers, but just keep asking the questions and the teachers will come. And
beautiful, good guidance from go mom.
Yes. And they've filled my life. So I have kept asking the questions.
So you have been on this journey and you have been questioning for your entire life up to now and still doing so, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are the questions that most intrigue you today?
So I like looking ahead. I like being very, very present rather than what got me here, but seeing like what's the leading edge for us. And it is about consciousness. My mission is to elevate human consciousness from our current state of fear and the illusion of separation back to our natural state of love and deep connection. So with that as the premise, I'm saying, what is consciousness? First of all, I want to become a student of consciousness and understanding what that means. And then how do I, this is the question, how do I set an example of elevating consciousness? That's the question for me.
And what have you come up with?
It's how I live my life every day, trying to be, again, aware of who I am more than anything else, putting my spiritual path as my primary life's goal, to align my personal self with my soul self. And the way that I do that is by first observing that, one, I am not any of the things that my five senses can observe. It's very easy to project ourselves into our vehicle, our job, our spouse, our kids, all of that stuff. And to know that those are things that are reflecting who we are, and they're tools to help us gauge our path through life, but they are not us. And then there's the other part that's really harder to confuse, that we are also not our thoughts. We're not the things in our head. Those voices in our head, we're aware of them. We are the witness and the observer of those voices. And those voices are also a guide and can help to do it, but they're not in charge. And so when we let the voice be in charge, that is when we become a victim. And when we are in charge of the voice, when we know that we can control the voice and we can make choices, that's the true empowerment. And the same thing with our emotions. We are not our emotions, but our emotions are not bad. It's not bad to be jealous. It's not bad to feel anger. These are telling us, these are giving us signs. And so when we can look at the signs and observe them, that's a big piece of it. The last piece of it is understanding that our whole life purpose is to heal our samskaras. And our samskaras are all of the things in life that we either run away from or that we cling to. And it can be both. We know about the fears of being hurt as a child and that we're always avoiding that pain for the rest of our lives. But there's also those little things that made us feel good that we're constantly chasing and holding on to. And both of them, neither of them serve us well. So being able to observe both of these things and have the emotions with them and the thoughts about them, but without the attachment. Buddhism talks about the Four Noble Truths, and that all suffering, all human suffering, comes from attachment, and that we can release all human suffering by releasing attachment.
Which is a tall order. I always think it's a tall order.
It's that easy. Just release attachment. You won't have any more suffering.
One of the things that I'm always, interested in is, I love everything that you just said about who we are and who we are not, right? Because a lot of times I think there's a misunderstanding, particularly from certain folks following certain types of thinking that all you need to do is just focus on your thoughts, and then I'm going to picture a bicycle and a bicycle will be there, like in the
Yeah, law of attraction.
Right. The law of attraction. And, one of the things when I was writing my book that really became very apparent as I was sort of really diving into what this really means is that, what we can control, or what we not even control, but what we can direct in terms of how our energy flows is how we respond to any situation. We don't control the situations that happen to us. And I think that's a misunderstanding that people often have when they think about how their energy functions.
I think you're 100% right. I think that is actually the leading cause of suffering, is our need to control. And that we try to get the nice house because we think if having a nice house will make us happy, or we have a nice spouse will make us happy. So that's control. That's trying to say, if we make the outside world the way that we want it to be, then we'll be happy. And that is an absolute setup for disaster, because you can never have complete control. And if that's what you need to be happy, you can never be happy. So the law of attraction is a setup for failure. And people that are focused on this law of attraction are always hurting. And they're always like trying. And when the next level of law of attraction is surrender. Because when you can surrender to what is, then you can just be present with that and focus and have the energy flow, instead of trying to force the energy to be where you want it and thinking that you're smarter than God.
Yes, I love that. That's so right on. It's very boldly said, and I really appreciate that. I think I've been a little less willing to kind of jump in quite boldly. So I appreciate the directness. When you feel, do you ever have those times? Let me just ask this way. Do you ever have those times when you feel like there's these things to be true, you believe them to the very marrow of your bones, and yet you're in a circumstance that keeps you, somehow you're still disconnected? Do you have those times when you feel there's a disconnect, or do you feel pretty much all the time like, oh, I'm just tapped in and I'm going along, oh, everything is groovy?
So obviously, no, that I definitely get triggered.
Well, what I really want to know is, what do you do then? How do you manage that? Yeah.
Well, just to understand first is what triggers me, because what triggers me is what's closest to me. There's no one that can trigger me like my wife can. And it's not about her.
Right.
The triggering is about me. Doesn't matter what she's doing. The triggering is about me. And so me being aware of that, at first it takes a lot of apology, because there's this whole blame thing of, oh, well, you made me do it. Like I only lashed out because defensive.
It's victim mindset, right? It's a victim mindset.
And so I need to get out of that. I need to say, well, you didn't make me feel defensive. I felt defensive. And so I lashed out, and so that's the first thing is
taking accountability, owning your own part. Yeah.
And I think that's really the only part. That's really like all I can do. But it's still a practice of like, how long does it take to recover? Like when I'm seeing myself in that, does it take an hour, or does it take 5 minutes, or can I do it in 30 seconds?
Yes. One of the things that was really helped me is comes from Sharon Strand Ellison, who wrote and created a system called Powerful Non-Defensive Communication. Amazing book about what defensive actually is, how it's basically, bred into our very culture, and what we can do to reprogram that. But one of the questions she asks herself, or she says she talks about asking herself when she's feeling defensive, or when she's feeling that is, what if I didn't feel like a victim right now, what would I be curious about? And for me, that right, because it becomes a really good, almost a mantra. I know one of the ways in which, when my wife and I are in some kind of struggle, which we both grew up through powerful non-defensive communication, but a lot of times we're both improvisers, and so we'll just improvise and get big with it until we're both laughing, and then we can come back to really the meat of unpacking it.
Can you say that again? If I wasn't a victim?
If I wasn't a victim, what would I be curious about?
What would I be curious about?
Yeah. So, while I'm still in the place where I'm thinking, oh, you said something and I got defensive, it's my own stuff that I got defensive, but that was aggressive and hard to hear. Well, what would I be curious about? What made you say that so strongly? Or what is it that you were actually trying to convey underneath the tone bring for me? Or, that, so what goes underneath it?
I see. So that makes it very effective because now we're working through it, and it's creating a bridge rather than a wall.
Right. And it's also not just about me doing my own inner process, which is, of course, vital and a place to start, but it's also about like kind of coming back to you, because it's a communication between the two of us that has created a dynamic that I don't want. So
Right, you're solving the problem. It's not just, okay, I'm internally saying, okay, I'm accepting responsibility, but we're untangling the knot.
exactly. Yeah, I love that. A beautiful way to put it. So I know you have an event coming up, Mark, and I still have this dream to be there live. As you know, I'm definitely signing up virtually. And it's great that there's an option, because one of the things I know about you is that when you do virtual events, you really know how to engage people. It's not a unilateral energy going one way. You're really looking for that sort of reciprocal loop. That is what infinity is based on, right? Is that sense of how do we connect and how do we go back and forth. So let's talk a little bit about this event and what you're doing. I know it's the fourth time you're doing it, why you're doing it, and what's important about it.
Well, I love the way that you set it up about the idea that it is live and virtual. It's our first time we've ever done a hybrid. We first hosted this event. It was my very first 3-day event in 2020. It was February 2nd, 2020. I was guided to that date. And then when I found out that date happened to be the day of the Super Bowl, I panicked. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get anybody to come here on the day of the Super Bowl? And found that's why the spot was available in the first place. And I'm like, but I said, but I was guided here. Well, how could I do it? So I went to cancel and said, well, let me reschedule it for the fall. I was going to reschedule for the fall of 2020. If I had done that, I'd be out of business now, or I'd be struggling terribly. But the hotel said, okay, well, you can do that, but we're going to keep 80% of your money, and you can get half of that back when you reschedule. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'll have the event. Had the event, and we had 70 people there live. It was, again, I felt like a soul calling. I really do believe that part of my mission in life, or my role, I should say, is to be a host of the Soul Family Reunion. And so that's, to me, what this event is. And it's grown from the 70 people that were there live in Orlando in 2020 to then, of course, the next year, everything was shut down. But I had been doing online events. That was my first, virtual live one. I've been doing online events for the past 10 years. So it was a real natural progression to take the live event and to move it online. And it was really interesting to what you were saying before about that engagement, because there was all of a sudden no way to meet in person. And this was the only way for people to connect, was through Zoom. And because we had a way of doing it where we could let everybody connect with each other and get that feedback, having the Zoom breakout rooms, and the entire event is set up so that it's not, like you said, that preaching. Each segment is setting up a conversation like we're having now, and then we can go out into breakout rooms and within the room having people that are conversing and sharing these ideas, and then bring all of these ideas back to the whole, so that we can all get it. It's the whole hero's journey cycle, and we talk about that at the event. So the actual event, the structure of it, again, it is going to be a hybrid. So we've got about 76 people right now registered to be live, and about 100 that are attending online. And so we'll have a full AV team that will be there on Zoom, making sure that they're getting, that we're hearing what they're doing and they're hearing what we're doing. But each segment will have breakouts so that you'll get to hang out with your groups. Day one is all about connecting to who you are, the whole thing, beginning of our conversation, who you are at soul level, because who you're being is your greatest contribution to humanity. More than anything that we do, more than all of our business and everything else, it's who we're being, how we're showing up. So day one is all about showing up even more of who you are, finding out, discovering more of who you are, being more magnificent. And the second part of the day is about tapping into your inner guidance as your primary compass. So everybody will get to share what are your tools for using inner guidance and learning new tools and expanding some of those tools. And then day two is about connecting to why you're here. What is your soul purpose? And so we'll be talking about, again, going back to the hero's journey, the 8 steps of your client's transformational journey, what that looks like. And we'll actually be mapping out your customer's journey with you. And so everybody will have a map to use, and will be different ways that they can create it. And then we'll talk about the 5 elements of a soulful offer. Again, this is the key that you have that can unlock your client's suffering. whatever it is that you do, your offer can help you to help people. But there's this whole thing around sales and making offers, especially for service-based people, people in our industry that really have this conscious, they're really wanting to be of service, often don't know how to charge what they're worth, or feel bad about charging for their gifts, and don't even understand how to communicate what their gifts are. In fact, a lot of times they don't even know what their superpowers are. So we'll be talking all of that on day 2. And then day 3 is my favorite. It's connecting to your soul tribe. And your soul tribe is your perfect customers. Those are the people you're here to serve. Your dream team, which are the people that are here to help build you up. That's my wife's specialty. And then your affiliate ambassadors, people like you that share the work that I do with their audience. And so that's the structure.
That's just, it's absolutely brilliant. It makes me think of a sort of spiral that just gets bigger and bigger as you go.
What do you say, spiral? Because that's actually my map. You'll see that my map is spiral.
Well, one of the concepts in my book, which is based on Qigong, is how circles open into spirals, how we can kind of go around this circle again and again. For example, with me, I had a very we call him emotionally abusive dad, and we reconciled by the end of his life. I have a big story about that, but it was for a while, it was like every time I would take a risk or do something that would be a little bit bigger than my comfort zone, it would be like I would zone in on whatever face that reflected his thing. It was, women should be seen and not heard, and all those messages would kind of come to me. And when we're doing our inner work, which you're so proficient at, and your book reflects that so beautifully, by the way, we kind of come through that again, but we come on a different rung of the spiral. So it's not like that pattern necessarily goes away, but our experience of that pattern completely transforms. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what you're doing here with this amazing event. So let's see, I'm going to put in the show notes, I'll put the link so people can read a little bit more and join you, whether it's live, for those of you who are on the East Coast or in Florida already. Don't miss it. This is a real opportunity to not just, get information that's useful, but to be in a room full of people, whether it's virtual or live, to be with people who share a certain type of understanding of who we are as humans, right? That we're humans, right? We're spiritual beings having a human experience. That whole concept that we're here to really be, like you said so beautifully, Mark, to be who we are meant to be ourselves, and to really own that is enough, and that is our purpose, and that is everything. And then to learn how to use that in a way where we can actually have businesses that support that. So this is a beautiful coming together. In a way, it reminds me of the coming together you talked about at the beginning of spirituality and science, right? You're bringing together business and soulpreneurs. So beautiful.
Great. I also wanted to, I don't even know if I'd mentioned to you, but for your audience, my wife created a special discount. So the online is $197, but if they put in Soulful as a promo code, then it will be 50% off.
Wow, that's amazing. And so is that all caps or all lowercase?
All lowercase. Soulful, all lowercase. And we'll have that in the notes as well.
All right. Okay. Energy Matters, folks. You now know the code. I mean, for $100, how could we not join? How could we not? Mm-hmm. So thank you so much, Mark, for being here. You have any other final words of wisdom that you'd like to impart?
Well, I think what you were just saying, like, I just continue on that. It is really nice to have a business that can help us thrive. The term for me is thriving in your purpose, but the purpose really is about just our own awakening. And that is enough. And it's not about how our business is doing on money and everything else. When you are aligned with your soul, the path will open up so that you can sustain and thrive in your purpose. But more importantly than that, you're going to be happy. I mean, the whole idea of the business is to lead to happiness, to lead to impact. We want impact, profit, and scalability, which means that we can have the resources so that we have the free time to spend with our spouses and our family and all of those other things. So it's all about having a really, truly rich life.
Say no more. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Mark, for being here. I so appreciate you and everything that you bring to people. I mean, I think that the work that you're doing is transformative. We need this so badly, I think, on the planet today. So I appreciate you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Vicky. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody else, till next time, be well and let the chi flow. Bye-bye.